Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast. I'm your host, Raghunath, along with co-host Kaustubha Das. Welcome to our show. This is a show where we study the Srimad Bhagavatam regularly. That means daily. We do it daily. We practically don't take a break. Especially, when I travel, we take a break, but I haven't been traveling. It's even better. Even when I travel, we do it.
Yeah.
We just miss it sometimes on a flight or something. And we're going through, if you're interested in yoga or if you're a yoga teacher, this is we specifically did this to deepen our understanding of yoga philosophy and how to make it practical, relevant to our life. So it just doesn't exist in your mind like, okay, there's a controller and the gunas and how does this work? It actually works. It doesn't only work, it works great. And it's not only useful, it's like I find it a necessity in my life to steer my vehicle around the material world without driving off cliffs, hitting massive potholes, etc. I find it incredibly valuable. And I'm here with Kaustubha. And Kaustubha, how are you, Prabhu?
Doing good, Raghunath. I say Raghunath. I guess I'm not completely here because I'm messing up your name, but otherwise I'm doing good.
Yeah, so we have our Sweet Baby Krishna class last night. It was really good. If you're unaware of it, we do a class called Sweet Baby Krishna, which is all the stories of Krishna's pastimes. But we started off in three ways. First, we start off with I give out the lyrics to everybody who's on the call, and we go through chant these stotrams, stutis, or astakams, like various prayers. Yesterday we did the Ganga Stotram. We all chanted it together. And then it was nice. And then I told a story, a Krishna's pastime story. And then we read from Krishna book and I stop and comment on it. And I think that's a pretty good format. I haven't heard any feedback from anybody yet, but I think that's a good format.
But it's the first time you did it that way?
I sort of we've been adding these prayers because they're very, rhythmical and melodic and the beautiful Sanskrit poetry. And so, it's been nice. Okay. Joe Adamo said it was great. Okay. So anyway, if you want to get on that's part of our Patreon, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. It's a access. You just give anything you like. I think it's got to be above $1.
It's got to be $1 at least.
It's got to be $1 at least, but anything you'd like to give to help me and Kaustubha support this, we appreciate it. But then we have access to this whole other bank of videos and education and songs and cooking and crazy chat boards. Crazy spiritual. That's my type of crazy. Okay. These guys go on forever, but it's all transcendental. I try not to get caught up in chat boards, but I can't help it. It draws me in. So anyway, also if you have any questions, we have a question section on the chat board in Patreon, or you can email your questions to Mara. She's our executive producer. She's quite educated. She's good at fielding questions, answering them occasionally. I put her on the hot seat. And her email is
Wisdom of the
Sages 108 at gmail.com. Wisdom of the Sages 108 at gmail.com.
So then we take those questions and answers. We answer them on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. now.
Yeah. We
Eastern
move Saturday to 8 and Sunday to 8. Sleep in Saturday, sleep in Sunday, we call it.
So Saturdays will be especially about questions and answers, and Sundays we'll be interviewing people. And this coming Sunday, we've got a great guest coming on.
But we can't tell you.
Why not?
Well, I guess we can. I try. I have kids, Kaustubha. Everything's a surprise with kids. Like if I get my kids something, they'll say, "Can you hide it somewhere?" You can't just give them a gift. I gotta hide it. Okay, Let's hide.
Don't tell your kids, but for everyone else, Genevieve Harrison will be on this Sunday.
Oh yeah, Genevieve Harrison. We love Genevieve Harrison.
So
She's a wonderful kirtan singer.
Incredible kirtan singer, incredible devotee all around. Just great soul. So looking forward to that. That'll be this Sunday.
All right. Well, what do you say we dive into this sweet Srimad Bhagavatam? Unless you want to say anything else about it.
I'm ready to go because I have a feeling we're in a really great part of the Bhagavatam today.
We're in a really good part of the Bhagavatam. Wait do you hear this? This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, Text 39. And this is right before the great hero, Bhishma Dev, leaves his body. And he's like, this is like the trials that we go through in life. Sometimes we have a trial in our yoga class. It's intense, but the teacher tells us to breathe, tells us to focus, tells us to go inside. Then we have a trial after yoga class or during the week, but due to my yoga practice or my meditation, I'm feeling some intense strain, some struggle. But now that inner voice is telling me, go inside. You're not the body, you're not the mind, you're something divine. But here's the final time we use this instruction is you're at the time of death. I can't imagine that. I've had some near-death experiences that you know of. But there's times where we are actually a little freaked out. Can we go inside? Can we be connected? And this is what Bhishma is demonstrating, the art of dying. It's actually quite beautiful. And so we're going to dive into that right now.
Okay. We read 39 yesterday, but I don't think we read the whole. I think that it's worth us going back into because I don't think we got fully into the.
Yeah, we didn't read the commentary, or we didn't read part of it.
Some of it, yeah. But why don't we just start with it again?
Okay, cool. So we start with these. If you're new to this, we start with these mantras, and these mantras are just sort of appreciation for the Bhagavatam. It goes like this. It's a little ditty, and it goes like this: Narayanam namaskritya naram shaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vasam tito jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is their very means of conquest, one should first offer obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will be vanquished, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established in the heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right. Did we read some of this purport, part of the purport? How did that work?
We read some of it, but why don't we just take it, anew?
Okay. Let's take it from the top. A pure devotee, the Lord constantly...
why don't you go ahead and read the verse too?
Okay. At that moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver, Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left. Oh yes, bridle rope. Who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Yeah, this is when we're talking about our original forms. We have an original form.
Sva-rupam is the term here, sva-rupam. The original form. So it's that it's being expressed here that we have a form, we have an original form that we're meant to be inhabiting, but somehow we are in this just like when you're in a virtual reality, you get your avatar or whatever, or not, like when you're playing some video game or something like that, and you kind of embody that artificial form, right? But you have a sva-rupam, you have a real form outside of that video game. And so it's saying that everyone that died on that battlefield, they attained their sva-rupam, their original form, because they died in the presence of Krishna.
Yeah, it's unbelievable to even, if you actually just think like that, there is a form that has nothing to do with what I know as Raghunath. Raghunath is a casing. I mean, even though it's such the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti life, to understand that I have there's an original driver of this vehicle, and this original driver has a form and a unique personality that's similar to this personality, but this personality is so covered by ignorance and passion, tama and rajagun, that what comes out of me is just sort of like, you're just getting a glimpse of me. In the same way, if my young child put a blanket over his head and he's walking around the room, you can understand, okay, he's short, he's got 2 arms or something, but you're not actually getting the picture. To the degree that that blanket is thicker, you have less, or suppose he's in a box, you know what I mean? But if the blanket is very thin with some holes in it, then you start to see, oh, I can see that face underneath. So to the degree we clean our consciousness, purify our consciousness, this kama, krodha, lobha, lust, greed, anger, envy, these are the things, these are the original pollutants of the soul. As we start cleaning the internal environment of these pollutants, the internal us starts to shine through the external body. And we start to become what the sages call in this world, but not of this world. This is our work. This is our Himalayan peak we have to climb in this lifetime. How was that analogy? Did that work for you?
I'd like it a lot, actually. I just
made it up. Just made it up now. Blanket over my head.
I would just say, just to be precise, that it's not so much pollutants of the soul, which is never polluted, but pollutants of the mind.
Pollutants of the mind.
Yeah. And so that the true soul, the true nature of the soul isn't perceived, just like it's under a blanket like that. Or say like in a dream, like in a dream, you're in a form and things may happen to that form. But when you wake up, you realize, oh, that form was just a dream form. And then you're back in your so-called sva-rupam, in your original form. But that was right?
Ever have one of those dreams where you wake up and you're like sad, like, this form.
Well, when we wake up to our sva-rupam, we won't feel like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
good. This form again. A pure devotee of the Lord constantly sees the presence of the Lord within himself because of being transcendentally related by loving service. Such a pure devotee cannot forget the Lord for a moment. This is called trance. The mystic yogi tries to concentrate upon the supersoul by controlling the senses from all other engagements, and thus he ultimately attains samadhi. A devotee more easily attains samadhi or trance by constantly remembering the Lord's personal feature along with his holy name, fame, pastimes, etc. Therefore, the concentration of the mystic yogi and that of the devotee are not on the same level. The concentration of the mystic is mechanical, whereas that of the pure devotee is natural in pure love and spontaneous affection. Bhishmadev was a pure devotee. And as a military marshal, he constantly remembered the battlefield feature of the Lord as Partha Sarati. So that's the name of Krishna on the chariot.
Chariot driver.
Right. The chariot driver of Arjuna. Therefore, the Lord's pastime as Partha Sarati is also eternal. The pastimes of the Lord beginning from his birth at the prison house of Kamsa up to the Mosala Lila at the end, all move one another in all the universes, just as the clock and hands move from one point to another. And in such
hold it, slow down. That's we just heard right there, right?
So this is your glory, Kaustubha. I'm reading this thing like I'm trying to get to the end, but you are just like taking it apart and relishing it. It's like the equivalent of like, I take some piece of delicious food and just shove it in my mouth and swallow it, and you're like tastefully eating it, chewing
we all
it.
have our own style. We all have our own style. But just what was just said, right? He said that the pastimes of the Lord, beginning from his birth in the prison house, and we'll read about that in the 10th canto, how Krishna is born, up to the Mokshala Lila, which means the pastime where he kind of leaves the planet. We're talking about that yesterday.
You don't talk about that much. It's not really talked about so much in Bhakti, is it?
Yeah, I suppose not nearly as much as his pastimes when he's active.
Right, and his birth.
So he's saying all of these pastimes they're all eternal. It's not like they happen once and then they're gone, because they're beyond time. This is just, it's a little challenging to try to stretch the mind and try to conceive of, but we're used to something happening and then it's ending and then it's gone. Whereas in the spiritual realm, something is eternal, particularly Krishna's pastimes. And it's saying that, so Krishna's born in the prison house, and then he, you're telling all the sweet baby Krishna stories in your thing. So, he's deals with Putna, he knocks down the trees, he does this, he does that, his mother chases him, and all these different pastimes are there, all with incredibly deep meaning and so on. But it's saying here that they happen in all the universes, meaning that we're just, our universe is just one bubble amongst unlimited bubbles in one big bubble called the material realm, which is floating in the spiritual sky. And so there's these unlimited universes, and Krishna's pastimes are playing out in those universes. And he uses this analogy, like the clock hand moves from one point to another. So like Krishna's pastimes are happening in this universe, now they're happening in that universe, now they're happening in that, they just keep moving around.
So it's happening right now in a universe.
Yeah. Bhishma's, I don't know if Bhishma's dying in another universe right now or so, but it's like all these
now,
things.
is it the same exact leelas are happening? Are they're nuanced leelas? Are they completely different leelas? Like Krishna does something else to Kaliya?
Well, here it's saying that the pastime as Parthasarathis happen is eternal. So I believe, it's a very good question. And I'm almost certain I've heard Prabhupada describe it as like, it's the same, but it's nuanced too. It's like, it has its unique kind of variety, but
Prabhu says the multiverse theory. It's a multiverse.
It's a multiverse theory. Yeah. So in any case, it's moving around.
Makes sense to me. There's a multiverse. Krishna's everywhere. His pastimes are everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me go to the next paragraph. All soldiers and persons on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original spiritual form, like the Lord after their death, because by the causeless mercy of the Lord, they were able to see him face to face on that occasion. The conditioned souls rotating in the evolutionary cycle from the aquatics up to the form of Brahma are all in the form of Maya, or the form obtained by one's own actions and awarded by material nature.
Okay, so that's not the sva-rupa, but it's saying there's all different varieties of forms, from fish up to the different animal species, all the way up to Brahma, kind of like the ultimate form in the material realm. But that all these forms, they're awarded by the law of karma. They're not our true forms. We get them based on how we behaved and what our desires are. We enter into them for some time. We leave them after sometimes. Those are not the sva-rupams.
We were having this question yesterday. It's one of those esoteric things, so I don't even expect a solid answer, because these are things you never know, but maybe you've heard. Pro also brought up this point about the sages of Dandakaranya were meditating on becoming gopis in their next life. And then after some research, it was also the sages or the women of Kosha. After all my research, I forgot it all. But anyway, there's the women of Matilla, the Yagya Sitas. Have you heard that?
I'm not sure.
Anyway, they had a long story, but there's a lot of different groups that became gopis in their next life. But they were associated with Ram in their last life. So is it due to isn't that association with Ram? How weird this question.
The way that you're talking about the sages have done the Karanya in particular?
Yeah. Aren't they already in like some divine form already being associated with Ram?
Apparently, well, I suppose there could be two answers to that, and I can't give you the authoritative answer. There may be commentaries on Ramayana or in Bhagavatam that cover that. Okay. But it would seem that they're not, initially that their sva-rupam is as a gopi with Krishna.
Huh. Are there eternal forms in Ram Leela that are eternal?
Of course.
Okay. I'm getting cold. Sorry.
Yeah. Hanuman will appear in Mahabharata, right?
What's that?
Hanuman will
Good
appear in
point.
Mahabharata hundreds of
Good
thousands
point.
of years later,
Good point.
even
All
in the
right.
spiritual realm. Right?
The impersonalist wants to attain. Where am I? Though the material forms of the conditioned souls are all foreign dresses.
Yeah,
A cool way to put it.
it is.
And when the conditioned soul becomes liberated from the clutches of material energy, he attains the original form. The impersonalist wants to attain the impersonal Brahman, effulgence of the Lord. But that is not at all congenial to the living sparks, parts and parcels of the Lord. Therefore, the impersonalists again fall down and get material forms, which are all false to the spirit soul. You want to explain that?
Sure. Here's Bhishma. He's in front of Krishna, and his love and affection for Krishna is like his heart is swelling, and he's feeling this divine love,
Right.
which Bhagavatam is going to identify as that's called bhakti, prema bhakti. And it's saying that at the beginning of Bhagavatam is going to establish that bhakti is the only way to completely satisfy the soul. He's attained that, right? So he's got that complete satisfaction of the soul. Now, earlier literatures by Vyasadeva, like say the Upanishads, are less direct, and they might have someone become attached to the idea that what I'm looking for is my ultimate achievement is peace, not love exactly, right? Not love for God as a person, but peace, like escape from all the sufferings of this world. I just want to merge into the divine light.
Yes, I've said that myself. I
Have you
need to
said
just
that?
merge out of this world and merge into some peace. I think I might have said it yesterday.
Yeah. So, but by the end of the day, you were with sweet baby Krishna. So
That was actually
So
a great way to wind up.
so it says the material forms of the conditioned souls are all foreign dresses, and when the conditioned soul becomes liberated from the clutches of material, he attains his original form. But the impersonalist wants to attain the impersonal Brahman effulgence, that divine light. They want to merge into that divine light. I don't want to know God as a person. I just want to merge into that light and escape all the sufferings and experience that deep peace. But the commentary goes on to say, but that is not at all congenial to the living sparks, part and parcels of the Lord. Therefore, so that the full satisfaction of the soul, the Atma supersidity, isn't met there because by nature, our dharma, our very essence is to love. And so that peace becomes very satisfying for some time. It's like it feels like ecstasy because it's such a relief. It may go on for a very long time, relatively. But at a certain point, just like sometimes we say, say Raghunath, you were feeling like you said you were yesterday, I just want to escape, I just want some peace. And so we shipped you off to the Bahamas, and you were all alone on a private beach, just sitting there by the ocean. And it would be very satisfying for some time. But at a certain point, you're going to want to be with your loved ones again. You're going to want to exchange with people.
I'm going to want to talk.
Yeah. And so here,
I'm just talking to the trees.
So therefore, there's that movie, right, where the guy gets stranded out on the island.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks.
I never saw it. It was something like called Island or something.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. Maybe someone can help us with that. But he takes but somehow he's got a volleyball out there on that thing. It's called Castaway, apparently.
Castaway.
And he takes that volleyball and he draws a face on it, right? And he even gives it a name and everything like that. Wilson.
Oh, really?
I guess because that's the name of that's the brand that makes the ball, right? So he needed a person, in one sense he had
this is a great analogy.
That just came up with it right on the spot.
That's a great analogy. We're getting revelations today.
Okay. So he needed, even though he had perfect peace and paradise, he needed a person. And so here, what Srila Prabhupada is indicating in this commentary is, even if one achieves that Brahman effulgence, at a certain point we need a person because we're designed to love. That's our dharma. That's our essence. And
don't hold me to this. I heard Prabhupada say one time, why isn't the Brahman effulgence permanent? And Prabhupada was answer, I shouldn't even quote Prabhupada because I don't know if he actually said this, but
Okay.
it makes sense. He said, because
Say the question again. What was the question?
you
Why?
know, why would the jiva leave the Brahman effulgence if it's so blissful?
Uh-huh.
He says, because eventually the soul gets lonely.
I've heard that. Yes.
Okay, good. We're clarifying that we both speculating together in a community. But I want to say, like, if you're interested in studying Vedic thought and you're new to this, these are the ongoing, sort of almost like the parallel yoga paths that, one, I take my spirit soul, I shed this body, I do the renunciation, I follow these yamas and niyamas, I study sacred literature, I isolate myself, and then I become one with God. You'll hear that all over Vedic thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even be confusing if now you're hearing a bhakti perspective. But the bhakti perspective is, I regulate my senses, I'm not the body. They run parallel. And then all of a sudden they shift because it appears on the outside that, well, it seems like the same thing. I met this Swami. He seemed very peaceful, you know, or she seemed like very like detached. But actually the siddhanta or the conclusion is very, very different. And that's why whenever we meet somebody from any other tradition or path, we should always find out what the conclusion of their teachings are. It's, in one sense, it's the same, and in one sense, it's completely different. And so it's always really important to understand what the conclusion of my teacher's teachings are. Yeah.
That plays out in the book The Journey Home by Raghunath Swami. It's kind of he was hearing both these sides and he couldn't make sense. And then Srila Prabhupada, by speaking Bhagavatam philosophy to him, synthesized it all for him.
Sure.
So there's the thesis and there's the antithesis, and then there's the synthesis, and Bhagavatam synthesizes the entire thing. Right?
Yeah.
But you know what analogy
it's happened with a lot of even people practicing bhakti now that I know that are older in their young ages. They were staunch
impersonalists.
Like monks, like what's his name? Amala Bhakta Swami. There was a monk. He was an acharya in an impersonalistic line, and staunchly. Staunch.
You never used the word staunch before you became a
No. It wasn't for bhakti. I would probably never say staunch. This is more bhakti on vocabulary education. Thank you, Prabhupada. But he was very staunch. And these people, what happened was you get a type of bliss from sealing off your senses. If you've ever done like a long-term fast, you become sort of like, and someone says, hey, you want some pizza? And you're like, no, thank you. You know, you feel very blissful not eating, and you can't even imagine indulging in the normal foods you would eat in, and you feel like above it. And, you know, the only thing that might seem attractive is a slice of cucumber. Perhaps I'll have that today. Oh, yes, that was nice. But you become detached, and your passions go down incredibly. So we can understand that there is like a type of a great pleasure from sealing off your senses in one sense. Mm-hmm. But when people start hearing about the pastimes of Krishna, something happens to their heart. Mm-hmm. And Krishna gets hooked in your heart. And I know a lot of people who are listening to us on Zoom, this sneaky little cowherd child somehow has got hooked in your heart, and you cannot shake him off. You can't shake him off no matter what you do. And then you're left, you're helpless. Now what? Now what? And whenever Krishna wants, that hook has been set. He can slowly reel you in without you. And you've tried to run away. You tried to hide, but he's in your heart. You can't get out. Now what? Mm. So this is the problem with hearing Krishna. This is hearing the stories of sweet baby Krishna. The problem with it is they're incredibly addictive. And if you like your material life, and if you like your material friends, and you like a whole material situation, never hear these stories.
Don't hear him.
He'll make them go. He'll make them seem, what was I, crazy? What was I thought this was so good? That's what'll happen. You'll lose the taste for even the things that you love of the material world. And you'll end up going to India, sitting on the floor. You know, you could be on vacation anywhere. You're sitting on the floor, chanting silly mantras, taking baths in sacred rivers. It makes no material sense whatsoever.
Drinking lassi outside Bunky Bihari.
Drinking lassi, eating aloo tikki. Come on.
There's an analogy that I use that I think can be helpful at this point. You ready?
Yeah. Do you like aloo tiki?
I love aloo tiki.
I love aloo tiki. Okay. Just making sure we're on the same page and we can continue on with this.
Okay, make sure we got that straight.
We got to get the Siddhanta correct. Okay.
So this is the analogy that when you're swimming, when you're a kid, right? And you're with other kids, or like maybe with a big brother or something, sometimes the other kids will grab you by the neck and then stick your head under the water, right? Has that ever happened to you, Raghu? You do it to your kids.
I have 2 older brothers. It happened to me every day.
I think you do it to your children too.
Yeah, I do it to them too.
Okay. So when your head is under the water, the mind is entirely absorbed in anxiety. Isn't it true?
Yeah.
It's just like, when is this going to end? When will it end? When will it end? I need relief. I need relief. You know?
Well, for me, it didn't even end on land. That's when they torture me in other ways.
Okay. Let's
Water, land. Okay, but continuing with
that
your
won't help the
analogy.
analogy. That won't help.
I was going through a little personal therapy with you right there, but okay. Let's just take it back to God consciousness.
So when your head is under the water, the mind is entirely absorbed in anxiety, deeply.
Okay.
Not even semi-anxiety, but it's like full anxiety. I need this to end. I need this to end. Then when they let you go and you come out of the water, you take a breath, right? And when you take that breath, it's such a relief that the danger's gone. Everything's okay. Mm. And it's almost like ecstasy, that breath, like, oh, this is so good, right? Like I can breathe again. So it feels like ecstasy, but we're breathing right now. And it's not ecstasy. It's just like breathing is just like the neutral stage. That's just like normal. Right. And there's so much in life to be enjoyed beyond just breath, you know? So the ecstasy that one feels in the Brahman effulgence, in kind of apparently merging into that divine light, it feels like ecstasy because I've been relieved from all material suffering that I've been experiencing for who knows how many thousands of lifetimes. And then I enter into this realm where there's complete relief. So it feels like it, but what the Bhagavatam is saying is that's just a neutral stage. And that stage you'll tire of at a certain point. You'll feel lonely. You'll feel, I need, because ultimately I'm designed to love. I'm meant to love. I'm made to love. And so so then people will naturally fall from that position back into the material realm again. And it's only bhakti that gives that complete satisfaction to the soul. That satisfaction that's one's feeling merging into the oneness is a temporary type of relief. But what one experiences through bhakti, through connecting through divine love, that's our eternal sva-rupa, our original form.
As the words of Shelter, so-called pleasure is a cessation of pain.
There you go.
So-called pleasure. Yeah, we've got a lyric for every purport. It's basically we just cut up different versions of Prabhupada's works and turn it into a song.
Nice.
All right,
keep reading.
Therefore, the impersonalists again fall down and get material forms, which are all false to the spirit soul. A spiritual form like the Lord's, either two-handed or four-handed, is attained by the devotees of the Lord, either in Vaikuntha or in the Goloka planet.
So in the Vaikunthas, the vast spiritual realm with unlimited spiritual planets where the forms of Lord Vishnu are predominant, then you would take your sva-rupa in a four-armed form.
This form, which is 10%, there it is, 10% spiritual, is the swa-rupa of the living being. And all the living beings who participated in the battlefield of Kurukshetra on both sides attained their sva-rupas, as confirmed by Bhishma Dev. So Lord Sri Krishna was not merciful only to the Pandavas. He was also merciful to the other parties because all of them attained the same result. Bhishma Dev wanted the same facility also, and that was his prayer to the Lord. Although his position as to associate with the Lord is assured in all circumstances. This conclusion is that whoever dies looking at the personality of Godhead, within or without, attains his swarup, which is the highest perfection of life. This question also came up yesterday in Sweet Baby Krishna, because it was that story, Krishna kidnaps Rukmini.
Okay.
So Krishna had to fight, and then he had to fight Rukmini's brother.
Yeah.
And it sounds horrific. Krishna is fighting Rukmi, and he kills his horses. And so then
everyone feels like, oh, why do you have to do that to the horses?
Why do you have to kill the horses? Just kill Rukmi. And it's like, and all our animal rights sentiments came up in my heart. Oh, come on. Horses go through so much, all that stuff in Central Park with the horses. But actually, all those horses were liberated. They were divine horses. And sometimes things that are tragic in this world, sometimes we only see them with our vision of this world. But there's other realms where things are happening. And these horses were all liberated. To get killed by Krishna, we're all liberated. We look at everything with blinders on because we can't understand the past story. Everything has a past story. Everything has a present story. And we get a glimpse of that with my little narrow vision. And then there's a future story also that I can't see. And the great sages have this trikala gyan, where they can actually see the past. They understand who this person was in their previous life, where they are now. These are actually, it's not even a great sage. Just mystics have these. And then they see what's happening in the future or in the past, in the present rather. And then they can see where you're going in this lifetime and also potential for your next life.
And Bhishma saw it.
Bhishma had that.
He was on that battlefield where like millions were killed.
And that's why I think it's safe to say that for the devotees, we don't lament for the living nor the dead, because we understand, like, it's not dead. There is no dead. Dead never happens. In this form, if anything was to ever happen to Kaustubha, God forbid, sweet baby Krishna forbid, I would lament. I would lament because I would miss Kaustubha. But I would deeply understand he's not in any suffering place. Krishna's fully taking care of him. I would just lament for my own selfish desire that I won't get to hang out with him anymore. But Krishna's taking care of everything. So we're allowed to lament in one sense, but with a deeper understanding of Krishna's got a divine plan for this person. That's why it's hard to pray for a person's health, isn't it, sometimes? Because you always feel like, well, maybe Krishna really just wants them to lose this incarnation and come into a new incarnation. What do you think about that?
That's a deeper understanding for sure.
It helped when my father was dying. When I first became into Bhakti, when my father was dying, I was like, I don't know, and he was in a coma. And I was like, do I pray for him to get out of the coma? Do I pray for him to die? What am I praying for? Doesn't God have a bigger plan? Maybe we should ask Ghanasham this question.
That's a good idea. We got Ghanasham.
Ghanasham, can you unmute yourself for a second?
He's in the kind of like the doctor's lounge or whatever there right now.
He's in
the doctor's lounge.
Isn't it weird that doctors used to smoke cigarettes in the doctor's lounge? That was a thing. That was a whole thing. Okay, Ghanasham, what do you think about praying? Welcome. We're still talking about you. If you haven't heard Ghanasham's on interview day last week, it was very wonderful. He's a chaplain at New York Presbyterian Hospital. And so he's a Hindu chaplain, but he'll see anybody and minister anybody.
He doesn't discriminate.
He doesn't. Anybody wants to see him, he'll see them. So what do you think? Do we pray? Do you pray for people's healing, or do you pray for them, God, thy will be done? Have you ever, what do you do when someone says, chaplain, pray for me? What do you secretly pray for? Like, okay, God, your thing, or do you pray, get better? But that might be against God's will. What do you do?
Yeah, I think actually traditionally Vaishnavas you don't really see prayers for health. You really see it does go to the level of the soul and accepting God's will. So I think it's not so common if you look in our teachers from the past of bhakti, and it's not the most common thing to see prayers that people's health improve, and so they usually don't go there. But also from what I understand, like real compassion means that we care about the body, the mind, and the soul of everybody. So a deep level of spiritual compassion, I think, should include the body. So it's nothing wrong with, praying for the health of a person. At the same time, like you said, it's the ultimate thing is that, you know, nothing's happening accidentally, and Krishna is behind this, and we want to also pray for the soul. So I think compassion definitely should include all parts of a person, and there's no harm in praying for that. But it's also not traditionally seen so much in our you know, our parampara, our sampradaya, that we don't see that prayer coming so often.
All right. Now that I have a death expert on the show, can I ask you a question? I'm trying to plan my death right now, and I've been working through it in my mind.
Right now?
Well, not
just,
right now,
just
but like in general,
right
I've been planning death, and it's like an ongoing project.
Mara's running out her door to jump in the car and stop you.
What about if I'm on some should I have life support? Should that happen? Or should I just be like, let me die, damn it. Just let me die. God wants to take me. Stop trying to save me. Or what about if there's incredible pain? Is that incredible pain necessary for me to transcend my body? Or is it like, well, he's going to die. Just give him tons of morphine. But then you could argue, well, morphine's going to put him in a tamasic state. Are these good questions? Should I just like be there with that pain? Or maybe the pain will not help me meditate on Krishna. But then you could say, well, Krishna will enter the mind. I'm going back and forth like this in my death fantasy.
It's difficult to plan these things ahead of time, you know, for all these reasons. So, I mean, there are some devotees who really feel like, you know, they're very clear that they don't want to go to a hospital at all when the time comes, you know. Some very advanced devotees will say that, and it's like, okay, just whatever, they decide on that. And others have gone to hospitals and have done what's necessary to get a little relief from whatever pain they may be experiencing, and they're still able to focus and so forth. So definitely we want to try to have a clear consciousness at that time. But if the pain is so strong that we can't do that, then you know, then maybe there's some way of finding a kind of compromise, you know.
You're a pragmatist.
I don't deal good with pain, period. Like even my wife giving birth, for me, that was painful for me. They called me the birth
You suffered
coach.
so much, Raghu.
I suffered so much during those births. They called me the birthing coach, but really what I was in the corner of the room just sort of shivering and shaking.
But you know what you know what friend of ours really had a glorious death? You know what I think of often?
Gunagraj Goswami?
Well, that was another one. But I was thinking of Korma-rupa Prabhu.
How did he die?
You don't know about Korma-rupa?
I know Korma-rupa, and I know he died. That's all I know.
He was this great soul, you know, American raised, but he moved to Vrindavan, the holy place in India. And he was just, you know, absorbed in his bhajan, his seva, and his you know, his spiritual practices. But he also took up this role of like caring for all the cows, like all the stranded or injured cows.
Yeah, you know, if you've been to India, you know, it's famous for wandering cows. But some of those cows belong to people. Like they come back to the people's homes at night and they let them out in the day. But some of those cows are just wandering, and they get injured or they get hit by cars. So he created a whole thing where they take care of these injured cows and nurture them.
If anyone would like to check that out, I think if you Google "Care for Cows," you'll find it.
Care for Cows Vrindavan. Great.
Care for Cows Vrindavan.
Program.
So he was, you know, he was just living in Vrindavan, serving the devotees, serving the cows, you know, doing his bhakti. And then he had, you know, he found out he had some very aggressive form of cancer. And you know, the advice was go to Delhi, you know, and have it dealt with. And he was like, no, it's okay. You know, I'll just stay here in Vrindavan. And he just peacefully stayed in Vrindavan and passed away, you know, thinking of Krishna, like Bhishma in a sense like that, you know. I remember it as it was happening, and I remember hearing his realizations at that time and so on. And it's just like, as Ganesham was saying when he was on the other day, you know, he sees how people face death in many different, sometimes become angry. So there's denial, there's, you know, there's all different stages that people may go through, fear. And he was just completely okay with, I've lived the life that I want to live. I want to, you know, I want to leave my body thinking of Krishna here in Vrindavan, and just peacefully accepted it, you know. So Bhagavatam can do that for you. Bhakti can do that for you. And Bhishma, here's that example.
you know, again, it's also not a mechanical thing like, okay, I want to die. I've seen people say, I want to die in Vrindavan, and the last minute, an ambulance brings them to Delhi.
Right.
Something like Krishna's got a big plan for you, and you can't cheat the system.
Right.
You can't, you know, you can't plant late and expect a harvest. So we got to do our time. Have you ever heard this story? The guy was, let me tell you a funny story.
Okay.
Ganesham, stay fluid, Ganesham. We want you around. Totally materialistic guy his whole life. And he's elderly, and his sons were like, man, we got to do something for our dad. He's so materialistic. He goes, okay. One of the sons goes, okay, I'll take him on pilgrimage. I'm going to take him to all the northern holy places. So he takes him to all the northern holy places. And the father was completely like, he came back and he said, how did dad do? Horrible. All he could do is think about business and think about business. And then they took him, the other brother said, I'll take him to the southern holy places. So many great holy temples in South India. Took him to all the places in the South. The father was anyway, and they took him to all the places in the South. And when he came back, so frustrated with his dad, I took him to all these incredible places. Still, all he could think about is business. And finally, he went to Varanasi, the holy place of Varanasi, where they have these burning ghats. And
where they burn the dead bodies.
They burn the dead bodies. And he sat there and he watched all day long. They bring these bodies in. The father was a cloth merchant. Cloth merchant means you sell clothing or cloth to make clothing. And so they saw all these bodies getting burned, and he put on these huge stacks of wood. And every time, and people from all over brought these bodies and they'd burn them. He'd watch the body burn, and he'd watch the priest bring in more wood, watch another body come in, watch the priest bring in more wood. And he said, Father, what did you think of this? He goes, this has been the most amazing thing. He said, why? Because you saw the body burn? He said, no. He said, why? Because you saw the families in tears and their attachment? No. I was thinking, why did I get into the cloth business? I should have got into the wood business. People are always dying. So it's not, you can't just rush to a holy place and expect to have that great realization at the 11th hour. We like to think, well, I'm going to just have my material life. At the last minute, I'll pick up some beads. I'll have someone read Krishna book. This has to be like practiced throughout your whole life. We can't cheat the system.
You can't cheat the system.
Can't cheat the system.
That's the theme here. Okay. I like that. If you want to return to your sva-rupam, your original form, you can't cheat the system.
You can't cheat the system. Come on. I'm reading this message board. What is this about sitting? Does it matter how a person's sitting up, Ganesham? Prabhu says the goal is to obtain Krishna in love. If you can do that, if it happens automatically in the time of death, what about the position of the body? Should they be upright? Should they be laying down? What is Pawa practice from Tibetan Buddhism? I don't know. What do you think? Does it matter how they're sitting? Should they be in meditation? Can they be on their deathbed? Answer me this, Ganesham. Oh man, yes. Answerer of. You're like the Wizard of Oz.
I've never heard anything about, and maybe some other traditions, there's a way of sitting that's considered to be more conducive. But I think for devotees, the real thing is where is our consciousness, whatever position we're sitting in.
Where's our consciousness at?
Yeah, Bhishma wasn't sitting up.
Bhishma, he was laying down. He was laying down. All right. So, and drugs, we haven't had a clear answer on drugs. It's like depending on the situation, whatever's going to help you.
Yeah, Raghunath Prabhu, even Prabhupada was trying to a little bit figure out what to do. Like at the advice of some of his disciples, when he got sick at some point, they took him to the hospital and he tried that out, and then he decided later that, I don't want to go back to the hospital. Okay, let's bring Ayurvedic doctors to him. And even that at some point, he said, they have also proven to be a failure, Prabhupada said about the Ayurvedic doctor. So he was also trying different things at the advice of, loving disciples who were saying maybe hospital, maybe this, maybe that. And so it's somehow we can make a plan, but we also have to be,
right.
It's almost something we have to figure out in the moment.
Right. And even with all those plans, Krishna has another plan where he's going to be with you. We can make all these plans in our mind or a schedule, or I can dream up my death turbo scenario in my brain. But ultimately, Krishna's got this plan how it's all going to work out. or not work out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a phrase used in this verse, Bhagavati Ratir Astu. You know, let my mind be attracted to Krishna. That's what he's interested in, right? And so in one sense, whatever's going to help that, we'll accept. And whatever is going to, you know, hinder that, we'll let go of. Yeah. And in one sense, that's a principle for life in general, right? What was it that, what is it? Krishna Matirastu? Is that the phrase? You know, Ganashamji? I think this is the way Sri Chaitanya would give his blessing to people in a sense, right? Krishna Matirastu. May your mind always be attracted to Krishna.
That's right.
So here we have Bhishma Dev saying, you know, Bhagavati Ratir Astu. That may now that I'm passing away, may my mind be fully attracted to Krishna. But you can't cheat the system.
Can't cheat the system.
So that we have to.
I've tried repeatedly.
Right. And that's, you know, how important that is. Sometimes we do see, I pick up my beads to chant, and I see my mind's not there. You know, I go to a holy place, I see my mind's not there still. You know, I mean, the example that you gave was an extreme example of the person, you know, who he sees the body's burning and he only thinks, if I can make money by selling wood. But yeah,
story.
But that daily practice is what it comes down to. You know, regularity is how something builds. You know, it's going to be described here that Bhishma enters into nirvikalpa samadhi. I think it's may even be in the next verse it mentions this. You know, that he enters a state of samadhi, nirvikalpa, where, you know, the mind is completely. You know, the Yoga Sutras speak of the different vrittis of the mind. And nirvikalpa means freedom from vikalpa, one of the fluctuations of the mind. But then the Yoga Sutras will go on to describe how one overcomes them. And it says one overcomes the fluctuations of the mind by practice and detachment. And it goes on to define what is practice. And it says something that's done with the right determination or devotion over a long period of time and without interruption, like, in other words, regularly, day after day after day. That if you do your yoga practice with the right determination or devotion, you're patient and you do it, you know, year after year and regularly, then that practice becomes firmly rooted. And then when the time of death comes, you've done your practice. You don't need to cheat the system. You can't cheat the system. But then you'll be able to focus the mind the way that you need to. And there you go.
Whoa.
And this is a daily practice right here. This is becoming firmly rooted in all this.
This is my daily bliss. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thanks, Ganasham, giving us your valuable, I was going to say 2 cents, but it's more like your valuable gold coins, your 2 gold coins that you added to the show. You really appreciate you. Kaustubha, I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Raghu.
I'm going to sit here in appreciation for a moment. And Mara, thanks for helping out. Thanks for everybody who joined us on Apple Podcast. I started realizing.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know what happened to Karma Rupa.
Oh, yeah,
we got to finish that Karma Rupa story. I got a good Karma Rupa story.
When I was at the temple, he was the Bhakti director.
Wow. Oh, it was glorious. Glorious.
So, yeah, it was really good times. And I had some really good times. And then when I kind of bonked out, I always wondered what happened to him. And thank you for sharing that. And
sure.
I'm watching the videos and it's really touching me. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Let's finish that story. I got a good Karma Rupa story too. I first met him when I went to India, and he befriended me and schooled me.
Been talking to Jayanta a lot, and he's been telling me how you and him, how he really preached to you a lot in those early days, man. That's awesome, brother. That's awesome.
Well,
You were saying that we should have somebody in our lives that we communicate with, and he's the person that I stay in touch with a lot, even though I'm like in Atlanta. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you so much, man. All glory to
we need friends in Bhakti. You guys will.
Bro, music on my most humble of basis, and I love yous all, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhakti Louie.
Thank you, Louis.
Giving me accountability every day, brother.
Thanks for joining us on Apple Podcasts or other. There's actually a lot of podcasts we're on. Stitcher, Google, something or other. There's a whole bunch of podcasts I just found out yesterday that we're on. And so thanks for Spotify. And if you want to join us here live, you can join us. Just email Mara. She's disappeared from her. She hopes she's okay. There she is. She's back.
You got worried?
Email Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And thanks for everybody supporting us on patreon.com/wisdomofthesages. We appreciate it. You really need two hands. You can't do this with one hand. You can't do it like this. You got to do it like this. Shiva